Okay, today I'm demonstrating this parchment card using basic techniques just called embossing. By the way, I'm Kanny, short for Kanika Sukseree from Bangkok, Thailand. Let me bring this out of the way so we can start, or I can just show you a little bit of the card there. Embossing, more embossing. I guess I just love embossing. These are the cards that I have done throughout the years. This card was published in Parchment Craft magazine, UK. I think many years ago. Believe it was in 2011. Maybe some of you have seen it before. The star of this craft is parchment paper. We have many different types available, which is one that we use all the time is the grayish one, and then the colorful ones. Now I think they come out with many options. The weight is 140 to 160 grams. Parchment for cooking doesn't work. It's a different type from what we use for this craft. We need parchment that is thick enough that when you press on it, you know, the tool doesn't tear the parchment easily. And when you lay it down, the edge stay flat, don't curl. The basic tools. Okay. Starting with the tracing tools. This mapping pen or just the pen. Usually this one comes with the nib, and then you use it with the white ink. And then you can use white pencil. This one is mechanical pencil with the white lead. And then you can use the white pencil, color pencil, pen, you know, any color you like. I even use the fine tool to trace. And next, the embossing tools. Embossing tools, there are so many kinds available. Okay, if most of you can recognize these two, they are very old. Mine is like 20 over years. You have ball tools in different sizes, and then shader tools and hockey stick. Okay. Today we're going to use only ball tools. Okay, we put that away. Then when you look at all the sizes, you know, this one is we call fine stylus, which is the finest embossing tool. And then the next one is slightly bigger, we call extra small, and then small ball, and then the next size is large, and then extra large. Today we're using only 3. So you take the very fine one out, and then the very big one out, leaving only these 3. Okay, so I'm gonna call it number 1, number 2, number 3. Make it easy instead of calling its name. And these tools will work only you use the embossing mat. So what you see over here, I have embossing mat behind. Now there are many types of mat or pad. There are like rubber mat, foam mat, or leather mat. They are slightly different, you know, for each type of mat, depending really on your preference. Okay, I'm using this mat is the foam mat, which is not very thick like the Pergamano one. It's probably half the size, I mean half the thickness if I compare. This is the one that they came out before, and then this is the one that I use. Okay, the pattern should be printed out on the A4 size. If you can't print it directly from Facebook, you just save the image onto your computer and then print from there. Now, before you can do anything with parchment, you need to trace. So you attached. Now I'm doing demonstration. So I'm gonna cut the paper into a smaller size, because when I flip the A4 size sheet, it just clumsy and then makes too much noise. So I cut into a small piece just to demonstrate. But for you, you see the dash lines over here. That is the fourth line, meaning this card is folded after you finish. So you just need the A4 size of the parchment and then put it, you know, the whole page like that. And then trace only this size. The top part of the pattern, I gave you more text just in case you just want to say something else. Okay, and this part over here, it will be a separate piece of parchment and then attach back onto this heart over here. Now, as I mentioned, there are so many ways of tracing. In this demonstration, I will be using white pencil to trace. Okay. Now, when you attach your parchment to the pattern, I recommend you place use 3 tapes and place and attach to the pattern in 3 places on the same row. You can flip open when you want to see whatever below or behind the parchment paper. If you tape it down both sides like that, when you want to flip open, you have to remove the tape. So that's really not practical. So this is, you know, a better way. Before I start tracing, I will find a piece of parchment paper, color paper. It can be vellum or anything. The color should be like not so dark. In the middle shade is good. This one, you know, it will help you to see what you are tracing, because when you trace with white pencil, I'm sure everyone has the problem seeing what you are tracing. So this one help you to see, you know, solve the problem. So I place it between the pattern and the parchment, and now you can see that even you have that piece of color parchment in the middle, you still can see through the pattern. So when you trace, you don't have to, you know, check on it all the time and try to see where you have traced. Okay, I'm going to show you over here. Okay, I'm going to trace this one right here. Let me move this one closer. Okay, I have traced part of the pattern, but I left this part over here to show you that when you trace, I start with this shape over here, then I move on to this one and then do the same shape. Keep going and going and going. Then I move on to the next shape, which is this one here. You should move your pattern around so it's in your swing curve. You know, I go on to this one and then this one here, which is the same shape, and then move your pattern around. So you keep going until the end. Then when I come to this part over here, well, it's just short lines, so I just do both at the same time. And this way you won't miss the chance of you missed tracing, you know, some area is like none, because you keep going one by one and not switching shape. Now you can see the use of the vellum. Okay. Now if I remove, before removing, of course you should check if you have trace everything. If not, you can just go back, just go back, and then it's already in place again, and then fill in what you have missed. Now for the purpose of demonstrating, I trace quite thick line because you can see better on camera. But in real life, I won't trace this thick. I will trace about this thick. You can see the difference, right? This one I would trace with white pencil, which the points, if I didn't keep it sharp all the time, then you get quite thick lines. For this one, I use the mechanical pencil with the white lid. Then it gives more precise and sharper lines. I like it this way better. Now move on to embossing. Okay, let me explain a little bit about embossing. When parchment is being pressed with the tool, fibers of parchment stretched. So stretched fibers, turn white. So once fibers are stretched, you should not work in that area too much, because if you do, fibers keep stretching further too fast and too hard, so it can break. That's how you get, either broken area or wobbling or bubbling. So you need to let that area that you just embossed rest for a while before you work on that area again. Now that you hear all the time, many parchers tell you, you should rest your parchment before you emboss the next layer. So that's the reason. So you need not to rush the embossing. Embossing is a process, that you go over and over again. So if you rush it, your project suffer. So let's go back to this card. Okay, now you can see that when I mentioned 3 types of embossing, we just name it so the technique that we do, you can differentiate. Now the fully embossed, the first one is fully or solid embossing. The text over here, the line, those are called solid embossing. And then the weave is as you call it. I hope I call it right. The outside over here, this one called shadow embossing. You can see the difference when we talk about solid embossing. It's create evenly white rest effect. So everything is white. There's no dark spots in there. While the shadow embossing produces a realistic effect, emphasizing on highlight, leave the shadow alone. So that is one we call solid embossing, shadow embossing, and the other one is called stippling. Stippling is also considered embossing too. It produces texture of embossing effect, not making holes. So it adds interest to your embossed, and it gives whiter result. You look at the letters here, the text here, you see it's whiter because after I did the emboss, then I stipple on it. Now we have one fully embossed, shadow embossing, and stippling. Okay. Now how to emboss? 3 different types. Okay, let's look at this one over here. I hope you can see well. Here I'm just giving the step-by-step how to emboss. The first one you see here, the one that I call fully embossed, this is the end result. Here also the fully embossed end result, shadow embossing end result. over here as well. Now you see, by the time I come to the result here, how many steps do I have? So this way, I'm stretching the paper slowly until I want to have the final result. After tracing, then you do the outline, emboss the outline first for fully embossed, and then you fill in the center, and then fill in the center again, and then come to the final result. Why do I emboss the outline? I can just answer in a simple way. It's just like you building the wall, or digging the groove. So you have like boundaries. So when you fill inside, you won't bleed outside because the fiber has slightly broken or stretched, so it will not bleed outside. So you can see my embossing, my embossed circle, I didn't have any bleeding, simply because I built the wall first. So all the fully embossed, I always build the wall first by emboss the outline, okay, and then fill in this one with the tools of the choice that fit the area. Now, when I start, I told you I chose these three sizes of embossing tool: number 1, number 2, number 3. So I use number 1 here to make the line, to emboss the line. Now, even it's in different shape, it doesn't matter. I do the embossed line, the text also I emboss the lines. So let me turn the other way. Emboss, you always work from the back, and I forgot to tell you. Now, many people said I forget which side to work on. Well, embossing usually always working from the back, and then the finished product is is the front there. So I use the tape. I recommend you use the tape. Put it there so this is the size that you're working on. But when you come over here, you see the tape is not showing on this side, so you are not on the embossing side. Now, even you go to the different shape for fully embossed, you do the same thing, step by step. By the time I come to here, I have done 5 steps. The dots is the circles here are very important in parchment craft, as you know. When you make lace and everything else, let's look at this one here. You see, if you didn't make nice, circles, or even the long shape, the cockroach shape, the cockroach egg shape, your lace won't look as nice. Okay, shadow embossing is slightly different, because when you do shadow embossing, you want to emphasize on highlight and leave the shadow alone. So it will give you, if you emboss flowers, it will be realistic look by doing that. So you emboss the same way, but the lines that you're making is different. The line you're making will be something like this, meaning you press your tool and then you lift it up toward the shadow area, press at the highlight and then lift at the shadow area, meaning you emboss into the shadow, but lift it, or move your tool away as soon as you reach that area. Okay, so when you emboss the outline, you won't emboss the whole thing. You will emboss only where you want the highlight to be, leave the shadow area alone, okay, and then fill in same way, but with the flicking stroke, like that, with the tools, larger tool first, and then go to the smaller tool, then it will get whiter and whiter until you reach this one. I'm showing over here the object being on top of one another. Okay, same concept applied if you have done this one. Wherever highlight, then you emboss the line, That's the highlight is usually in the at the top there. That is the lightest. So I would emboss this line here, and then carry on with the process by emboss between the line with the large tool, of course, because this area quite large. Okay, so you will do the stroke from touching here and then flick out, flick out, flick out, and then come to this side, flick out, flick out, flick out, and then you move on to this to the next step, which is on top. Then keep going with the same thing. The line gets shorter and shorter as you emboss. And then you can see the effect that it shows, that this area over here is on top, and then this one just gradually disappear somewhere. And then when you have the object below, you emboss the same way by emboss just the highlight area, which is over here, you see, and then the shadow that went under, the part that went under is the shadow, so there's no embossing. Because if you emboss all the lines, then you lose the effect of the highlight and shadow. Okay. Come to the last one, which is stippling. Now stippling, you just need a one needle tool. Normally you will need one needle tool. First you have to emboss lightly with the large tool, the area that you want to stip, and then after that you use one needle tool to do the stippling. The texture, you can see the texture different from just normal embossing. And this one here is the same, it's just I use embossing tool instead of one needle tool. By stippling, it's considered embossing technique, because even when you use the one needle tool, you won't be poking holes on that area. You just kind of make a texture in that area. Okay, so that's about sum up the 3 embossing techniques that I aim for today's live session. Okay, let's go with fully embossed. Now fully embossed is actually the text over here. So I'll show you. I come in with the number 1 tool, emboss the line. Now you have to make sure that you don't emboss those lines too white, because if you emboss it too white, you have to emboss between those lines that as white, and it's going to be difficult. Okay, you can always come back and make the line whiter, but you can't take it away. So as I said, do it as a process, systematically. Emboss all the lines first. So I go on to the next one. Don't rush it. When you emboss the line, it creates the shape for you already. So if you rush it, your shape could be, not so nice. You see? Anyway, white pencil, if you trace with white pencil, the lines can be erased after. So even if you didn't follow the line, which I do it all the time, you can, take those white pencil away after finishing. So that's what I do for everything here. Okay. Then for these lines, I won't use the too thin line because I want it to be thicker line. So I come with the second tool here. When you write the line, you don't break it into small section like that, because if you do, you get bumpy or bumpy line. So what you do is just slowly follow the line, lift up, just like you're doing shadow embossing stroke, and then come back on top of it. Then you won't have that too thick line when you connect the line. Okay, Okay, so if I turn around, you can see the parchment start to come up a little bit, and you know, as I said, it gets whiter and whiter as you go on many times. But if you went on one time and try to stretch it, you know, as white as you want in one time, you're gonna break the paper. I come back, I want this one a little bit thicker, so I come back with the number 3 and just do the same thing on top. And by the time you come back here, I mean, you should finish the whole thing. Don't work in one area at one time. When you come back here, this one already have rested, you know, enough. Then you can go on top of it without damaging the parchment. And then it gets whiter easier. Now when you do the strokes on parchment, you transfer the heat actually onto the parchment paper. So if you rest it, you know, just a bit, then the heat is transferred out, and then you can keep stretching it more. Now, okay? And then I continue to emboss the text the fully embossed way. Oops, maybe it worked. So lightly emboss between the line. Don't get it too white. Just fill in. Stretch the paper. Now, like I said, you don't go break like that, like that, like that. You break the fibers in many places. But if you keep long line like that, it will just, you know, the fiber breaks in good manners. So I move on to the next one. Same thing. Go from go in long line, not broken line, and then the next area. So I keep doing this for all. Again, one layer. Okay, so if we look back at this one over here that I showed you earlier, we did this step, you know, building the wall, and then emboss the first layer, and then I'm going back to the first one, and then go on like that. I still want to use the same tool, the same size, which is number 3. And then keep working on it. You can notice already that it gets whiter without effort. Just stroke your tools up and down. Follow the lines, of course. You can see there's no bleeding, simply because the walls that I built, you know, block all the, you know, bleeding, so you don't get any. Now you can see now when I come to this part here, the outline is still showing. You can see that, right? The outline is still showing. So I'm going to this one by changing the tool to the smaller size, number 2, and then follow the outline again. The first time you use number 1, so the line is slightly thinner. But when you come with this, the next bigger size, you can fill in the space easier. So I'm turning for you to see. Now you can see there, the outline's almost gone. Over here, the outline is still there. So keep at it. Make the outline first. When you come back to the outline again and again, it just you just keep building the wall higher and higher, and then the shape won't be blur. Now you understand, right? When I was saying earlier that if you trace with white pencil and if your emboss is not it's not precise or sharp enough, then you get blurry effect instead of, you know, very clear. Okay, now you can see that. You see the wall also help, you know, the embossing line also help, you know, raise the whole area you emboss up. There you go. Then you keep going with the rest. Now for shadow embossing, okay, you have to think first where is the highlight and where is the shadow. So when I come over to look at this one here, I can see right away that this one is on top of this one. Okay, so when this one on top, it should get highlight, and whatever below, you don't get highlight, you just get shadow. In this case, when you don't emboss in that area, the gray show through, so you get automatically shadow without, you know, embossing anything on it. Okay, so I use the number 1 tool, number 1, number 2. Okay, and then start from the middle there. I make the line like that and then like that, because this one going under, so I would not go that far. That part will be what you call shadow. And then outside here is the same, so the line will be something like that and then like that. Okay, not like this, this one is no. Okay, then I keep at it until I finish the whole thing. So it's just like I'm using, you know, GPS, so I don't have to guess where I'm going with the technique. So I always, if you have my book, you can see that every time before I start embossing, I would just decide first which line I would make. So when I start emboss, I don't have to guess, it's there already. Okay, and then maybe this part over here, you do the whole thing until there, come around. And then this part, if you want it to go under, you don't have to emboss anything, just leave it as shadow. But if I show you, if I do a little bit there, then you will get a different effect. Okay, I'll leave the rest. Then I move on to the bigger size. You always come, when you have big area, you always start with the largest size that fit the area. Don't start with the smallest size, because when you start the smallest size, you're scratching the paper actually, because you try to fill in that area with too many lines. But if you come in with the big tool, then you don't have to scratch the paper too many times. Okay, so I start in the middle, and then go out, go out, go out. Like I said, leave that area alone. And then this part over here, you just emboss as far as your embossed line, embossed outline that you have done. Okay, that's the first layer. Then I move to the next one. I do the same thing. I have embossed this area too, so I would just emboss with the flicking stroke, lift at the end where the shadow is. You don't go into it, just lift past it. Okay, if I flip over, you can see now the things start to make sense, that one on top of another. So I have come this far already, this step, and then I'm going next here. Okay, so as I said, you go around to the end and then come back. The paper have stretched enough. I'm still using the large tool because this area quite large. Don't make it too wide at this point. So if you receive a parchment craft card from a friend, you should frame it, treasure it very much, because so much effort going into it. But this one definitely go to my mom, because that's my intention of this life. I thought I'm making, a new card for my mom, and why not I show you guys how I do it. Okay, so I hope you will make this card for somebody, for your loved one, of course. Okay, you can see if you're happy at this point, if you're happy, then you're fine, because the effect has shown already that you get the highlight and the shadow, and this part is going on top of this one, and you're good to go. But for me, the outline is still showing. It bothers me, because it means that I haven't really blend good enough to bring those outline together with the emboss area. So I go back with the large tool again and then work one more time. I will work only on this one, so you can see the difference between the rest that I haven't done this step. Now you can see my paper haven't suffered from over embossing. Can you see that? I really love a realistic look on parchment, because it's just simple technique, but it creates so beautiful effects. Again, these are personal preference. Some people like to emboss a lot, then nothing's wrong. If you like what you've done, then it's good to go. Then for the stippling, in this case I use one needle, okay, because I don't want to achieve anything else but the texture. So on my table I always have this mat, which is from the office supply shop. It's just a plastic, hard plastic. So I just use this one, but if you don't have, you can use the piece of cardboard, dark color, so you can see what you're doing, and use it as the stippling mat. Now the motion of stippling is not it's not like poking through the paper. It's just up and down motion. You just have hold the tool upright, lightly embossed. Let's see if I do it on this one here. Lightly embossed, and then you just stipple. Then the stippling texture will be more obvious. Then you do very white embossing. Okay, you can see now. You can't see, I can just bring it in further or lift it up. Okay, now this one cannot really see, but this one you can see very well. Anyway, that's how I emboss on all my projects. I hope you learn something and add to your stash of knowledge of parchment craft. Anyway, stay safe. I'll see you next time. Happy embossing. Bye.